And we're live.
Hello, Paul.
Hi, June. This is footnote number 22.
Wow.
2022. I'm feeling 22. Wow. We've done the same number of footnotes podcasts as we are in our age. That off to a great start with the verbal fluency here.
Yes.
Um, what up,
Well,
June?
you
Huh?
you look like you sound like you're in a good mood. You're
I'm
singing your
yeah.
parts. Yeah.
I played 3 games of volleyball just now.
Oh,
Lost every single one of them. Um,
all right.
so don't know why I'm in a good mood. I think physical activity gets me in a
Yeah.
good mood. So
All right.
I'm ready to go.
All
Let's
right.
let's do this. Let's talk about stuff.
All right. You're gonna ask me how my week was?
Yeah, June. How was my week? So my week was really good. Had a really nice few days. Been studying. I have an exam coming up on Friday.
Very nice.
So I'm trying to like really orient myself towards being, you know, sort of someone who is capable of studying.
Mhm.
I need to play that role. And it's been kind of tough, I'll be honest. But yeah, working through that. Um, Another event thing that happened this week,
Mhm.
I pulled up my parents' restaurant reviews, which
Okay.
have been going up recently,
Oh, all right.
and that made me feel really good. I just felt so much pride, and yeah, there were some reviews that like there was one that said like, "Please adopt me." I think if I was their children, if I was their child, because both my parents work there, she's
Yeah.
like, if I was their child, I would probably eat really healthy, and I'm like, kind of. Um, I also wanted to reply like, "Sorry, house is full," or something like that, but. Yeah, it's been a good week. Yeah, so I'll throw it over to you. I don't have a lot to really talk about today, so hopefully you have
Yeah.
something to prompt discussion here.
You should give a shout out to your parents' restaurant so we can all flood in with positive reviews
Oh yeah,
after we go to the restaurant.
yeah. Well, regardless of whether you go to the restaurant, um, Magic Kitchen in the Village by the Grange in Toronto, hit it up. Don't hit it up too much though, because my parents are complaining. Even though business is going swell, like they're getting more tired, you know.
Hmm.
Um, just the two of them working there, so
All right, and if anyone wants to work there, that might be an invitation for a part-time opening. Maybe
yeah,
hit
that's the
us up.
second best thing to being adopted, I guess.
Yeah,
Get hired.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
dude. What's been up with you?
yeah. I mean, it's been another packed week.
Mm.
Yeah, like, I think studying. I think I've had like something like 3 different tests or assessments.
You
So
have tests?
yeah. Well, yeah, to most people's surprise, Mac does have some kind of tests.
Oh,
They're
wow.
they're more formative than summative. Um, so we had like a mock clinical skills kind of we call them MOSCIs.
Mock
So
Oskies.
yeah, mock OSCEs. So we have 4 stations where we practice our GI exams, and
Mm.
that was fun and also kind of stressful. And we have some other like multiple choice tests that gets us ready for the board exams.
Hmm. I wonder actually, is your Oski the same as our Oski?
Yeah, it's
Is it?
standardized
But
across.
is it really?
I
Because
I don't know.
even between our instructors, it's like different. You learn different things.
Like, yeah, I have no idea how standardized our curricula are
Mm.
because I can't both attend Western and Mac.
Well, we could
So
share our curricula here. Maybe that's for later.
maybe, I mean, that isn't the most enthusiastic topic for me, clinical skills.
Okay,
Seems
I love
boring.
it. I
Yeah.
personally really enjoy it, but
You love your clinical skills?
yeah, it feels like I'm a doctor. You know, like I'm doing all these exams. I'm percussing, I'm
Right.
palpating,
Yeah. Yeah.
auscultating. Yeah.
You're right. It's the only time you feel like you're doing something,
Yeah.
and like you're some authority. Yeah, but yeah, otherwise, some good news this week. So Matt and I heard back about our scholarship, the Renaissance Award.
Okay.
So we'll be getting part of that. So we
Oh,
are partial winners of the award.
congrats.
Yeah, thank you. So most importantly, the most important thing that comes out of this is that well, we have a valid excuse to take an enrichment year starting July, and that will last around 10 months before I join the next year's class.
Mm.
So I'll be also graduating as part of class of 2022.
Yeah.
Woo!
Welcome.
Our lives are synced up once again. Yeah, that's all I wanted the award for. So
Of course.
So yeah, start clerkship at the same time. Yeah, and that brings up a lot to think about, a lot to plan. It's exciting, and I don't know. It got me thinking about some different things, like yeah, like what kind of skills or what kind of things do I want to develop over that time?
Mm.
Like how, I don't know, that 6 month road trip could be, I don't know, complete waste of time, and me and Matt could be in the middle of like Northern Ontario, just like twiddling our thumbs and not knowing what to do. Or,
Mm-hmm.
or it could be something really great. But I'm not sure. There's so many directions that I could go in.
Didn't you guys have a sort of plan going in?
We did. But we can stick to the plan. We can do other things. It's really up to us. So yeah, I've been trying to think through like what kind of things do I want to work on? Like how do I want to change and become better over that next year? And uh, one thing for me is, you know, I want to get closer to solving some really difficult challenges that like our communities are facing, that like I don't know, humanity in general is facing. I don't know if that's too ambitious,
I
but
want to save the world. Yeah.
yeah, save the world, but like starting from a very small scale.
Mm.
I feel like the past year I've been working on myself, and I've been getting better. I've like my capacity to take care of myself is becoming better. Um, Maybe I can start extending out to like a few close people in my network, and I hope that in maybe like a year's time, I can start to experiment with some other projects and ideas, and then test those ideas out in the real world to see what kind of impact that they could make. So like one of those possible directions is music, and
Mm-hmm.
seeing if I could develop any kind of means of musical expression, because I feel like music is like a second language that everyone should have learned, and if everyone knows how to speak it like the world would be a much better place. But right now I kind of feel like maybe like a 5-year-old trying to speak English. But let's say that's like my musical proficiency. Like is there a way to elevate that, to start with, I don't know, some basic piano or guitar, and to experiment with that, and to push that as much as I can within like the year that I have, because that's going to be a big part of our future,
Mm-hmm.
like the future of humanity, I believe.
Is violin not something that you
Yeah,
feel is it's good for expression of music?
I think violin's great, but it's not a general purpose instrument.
Mm.
So So things like piano and guitar provide, yeah. Violin can provide like one voice, but piano and guitar, they provide the whole like structure, the whole chords, that can really carry a piece of music.
Mm.
So I think the violin would be great to incorporate after I develop some of those more like basic musical foundations. The great thing is, like, you know, I've been singing over the past 4 years. I've been like yelling and screaming every morning in the gym because that feels very satisfying. I'm working on improving my my range.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's one big thing. Like, I definitely want to focus on
Mm.
to learn to express myself in music.
Mm. So I'm curious because when people get interested in music, right? I feel like they have you can have one or the other. One of them is you want to go to a route of appreciation of music. So things that are songs that are already out there, or sounds that are out there, and sort of taking them apart, piecing them apart, and appreciating them more. And then there's the other side, which is expression, which is sort of this idea that, you know, what you have already and the words you say aren't enough to encapsulate the sort of thoughts and feelings that you're experiencing. And so you find music to be another way to express that, right? So would you say you're more on the side of expression or appreciation?
Yeah, I mean, I think the two will go hand in hand, but like my goal is expression.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I think something else that would be really cool to learn about is basic music theory, why people respond to, you know, some patterns more so than others. And yeah, it's a fascinating field, and we're starting to understand a lot more about the connections between music and our biology, our brains. Um, so that should be an exciting avenue of exploration. And like another idea or like thought that I think about is, you know, like from Game of Thrones, like winter is coming,
Mm-hmm.
or like the flood is coming. Like recently on scrolling through Reddit, or like someone else shared on Facebook today, this article about how I think local insect populations are like on the decline.
Okay.
And if that reaches like a certain threshold point, then that could have like very devastating um, ecological consequences. Because insects, you know, they form like kind of the primary root layer that, you know, of the food chain, and like things like bees and other insects help like cross pollinate, and like, you know, it's the communication system of the natural world.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, to hear that that's slowly being degraded at, and like we're now realizing these things, you know, there's you know, reason for alarm, and the need to evaluate and say like, things aren't always going to be the way we knew them, and if we don't, you know, transform ourselves and the way we live in a dramatic way, then, you know, the world as we know it might cease to exist.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe that's a bit dark, but and I'm not saying you should go sell your house and like go out into the streets and become a hippie, because, you know, as we might know, or we could predict, that's maybe not the most viable solution. But I think another part of the journey, I'd like to explore some of the fundamental challenges we're facing in terms of like, so we should transform ourselves and our lives so that it's more like, let's say, harmonious with the environment that we live in, and more conducive to peace and well-being and things like that. So
Mm-hmm.
how do we go about that? And there's fundamental problems in like every area of life that you look at, like food, exercise, social rituals, or I don't know, our schedules, like every single area of life we can think of might need to change. The way we communicate, I don't know, the communities and networks that we live in, right? And it's a daunting thing to think about,
Mm-hmm.
but I think a lot of people have been and are experimenting with different ways to live, different ways to be, and that's something I also want to think about too. So this is like me building my ark for the flood that's coming.
Right.
Yeah.
Are you gonna try an insect diet? Do you think that's the new craze, right? Like the what we think will happen with the food industry.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's such a craze. I I don't know. I haven't delved deeply into like the sustainability part of it. Like we don't even know exactly what's optimal for our health, let's say.
Right.
Like what's good for us. And that's been such a difficult question to try to answer, but yeah, like even going through the GI nutrition unit and trying to learn a little bit, from that Western perspective, how I don't know how metabolism and these different processes work. It's just like an endless stream of information, and it's so easy to get lost in it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I want to explore different like emerging directions. Like a lot of people are doing intermittent fasting, or where people are realizing that most cultures or like religious traditions have incorporated some form of prolonged fasting in their practices, and that uh, fasting is like a very natural state to be in, especially during like winter or times of famine, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's clear that we're really adapted to that, and I think by just having a constant supply of never-ending food and whatever, it might be that we're not giving our bodies, our GI systems, our gut biota the chance to regenerate and to heal. And so things like that, and that's like just such a small component of the way we live. Like there's so many other layers um, that we're starting to rediscover. Um, yeah, so I don't know.
Well,
There's a lot of challenges.
let's go back to the challenges then, because I'm curious um, how we can make this more actionable, and how we can make this something that you can actually break down and work towards and work on. So it's just an example from my week, something that happened. So uh, a colleague of mine, he posted on we have a medical articles group where we just share like interesting things.
Yeah.
And it was like Bell Let's Talk Day, and he had posted it, and he went on sort of like this rant about how mental health is pervasive in healthcare, and like there's a lot of issues in terms of not just stigma, but also sort of a lack of support in the healthcare system amongst physicians and healthcare workers, and this expectation that we have to have good mental health. Anyway, so he went on this rant, and I sort of commented and said, guys, like, can we come up with some sort of action? Like, is it time for us to like stop just talking about it? Is it time for us to move forward and actually cause some change? And that sparked an interesting discussion, and we ended up meeting. There's like 20 of us. We met like Tuesday or something, and we talked about things that we weren't satisfied about and what we wanted to change. And people had such great ideas. They were just throwing around these ideas, and we were talking about it. And then one of our other colleagues, he mentioned, he was worried that this is how all mental health initiatives and all mental health like clubs, how they started, and just with all these ideas and this goodwill and this desire to create change. But by the end of the at the end of the day, all it ends up doing is all that ends up happening is that it gets watered down into like workshops or like a day where people come in and they lecture about mental health and well-being and how you should take care of yourself, and then it sort of ends there because of the feasibility, because of the pragmatics. It turns out we can't produce a great enough change to to make something worthwhile. It just becomes this sort of tacky um, um, thing. I'm not sure what the word for it is, but so going back to what you were talking about, right? So obviously it's important to break it down into something that's very small and actionable, but then we have to somehow also make it so that having all of these small and actionable things will lead to a bigger product, a bigger change, right? Otherwise, we're not going to change the current status. It's just going to deviate a little bit. So I know this is very preliminary in your thoughts, but what are some things that you think are actionable and that you can act on starting tomorrow, maybe, that would help push this forward? And then how do we make that more impactful and produce downstream effects?
Yeah, so let's work with the mental health initiative example, right? So, so I think that's like a very fair critique that, like, one of the members of the group made, that the way this is heading, it'll probably end up being a mental health club with a few workshops that a few people attend and will not have any major lasting impact. True. Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the problems is that, so you think you identified like a problem, which is there's not enough mental health support for like medical students by like leadership and staff, which might be true. And in attempts to like address that problem, you're always bumping up against a barrier, against this this I don't know, immutable thing called the system, right? And it seems as though whatever you try to do within the system, like, you feel constrained, and it seems like the solution that emerges, doesn't really go anywhere, doesn't generate enough like positive momentum. And I think like one of the reasons that might happen is if like if the problem isn't identified and understood at a deep enough level. So the solution you're creating will end up being short term, and like it will eventually run up against this larger problem that was actually the root of these smaller problems. And maybe you were trying to address the smaller problem, but you slowly start to understand that there is a bigger systemic or root issues that are at the core of this. So I think that's the first thing, to understand that the range of like human issues and challenges that we're facing today are extremely interrelated, and that they have a deep history, and that they have a core issue, let's say. And like from the past 3-4 years that I've been curious about, like, what is the core issue of our times and things like that, it has something to do with the way we conceptualize the world, and the way we act within it. So I've gone on this rant before, and I'm sure you're familiar with the advent of like the Western scientific rational mind,
Mm-hmm.
We began to view the world as the universe as this, materialistic universe, basically like a blank Cartesian grid, that we just build on, and there's a lot I could go into there, but I think there's there needs to be a fundamental shift in the way we understand like ourselves, like, and the world around us.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's such a fundamental thing that like you can't solve all at once, but and it's a thing that like I, as one person with like very limited experiences and perspectives, cannot fully understand.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the thing to recognize is that, first of all, like, the challenges we have are very interconnected, interrelated, and they point to a bigger root issue. The root issue, not one person has access to like the amount of perspectives that would help us frame it and understand it truly, so that we can solve it. So like that puts us in a very tricky bind. It's like a catch-22. Like you can never understand like the problem, so how are you gonna find a solution? And every solution that you find, you're gonna end up running into the same problem that you can't fix sort of time and time again. Where I see hope for resolution is like with everything, like it has to start on an individual level. So let's say that you had a group of fully like high functioning. At high functioning, I mean as in like in terms of like your physical health, the way you like maintain your maintain and express your emotions, the way you have relationships with other people, your kind of spiritual and religious orientation, and like your kind of transcendent purpose for life. Let's say you have like a group of people who are, I don't know, well versed and competent, like in those regards, like very balanced people. And say you have those people coming together from a wide variety of different perspectives and expertise, who, when they converge together, they can have really novel understanding of like the kind of problems that we need to solve, and the kinds of solutions we can generate may be, let's say, able to escape the usual barriers that we come across in the system. Like it might sound a little vague, but what I'm trying to point at is like it's something that I felt recently, is like a lot of these problems I'm trying to solve on my own. Like my diet, I've been trying to figure out something like some ketogenic diet, intermittent fasting. Like, sure, it's done good things for me, but like, will it sustain like, I don't know, 10 billion people for the next 100 years? I don't know. And then just thinking about like, oh, how could I like overcome this struggle, like challenge? Like, how am I gonna make this meet environmental sustainability demands? Blah blah blah. And then I kind of realized last night, while like thinking about it, like, oh, there are other like many billions of other people who are maybe much more brilliant than me and have a different perspective that would be great to like share. But as you know, like working within groups and forming like a well-functioning group is one of the most difficult things in the world. And to bring people from vastly different experience ranges and expertise, and to have them work together to find novel solutions and gain a deeper appreciation of the problems we're facing, it's a big task.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we're starting to understand more about, I don't know, things like leadership and things like how teams can function optimally, such that when you have like an all-star Avengers kind of team of, you know, very well balanced and unique individuals, you can have some really interesting insights and solutions emerge that can be tested in the world. So yeah, I think that's more of what the world needs, is what I'm thinking of. There are a lot of brilliant advances being made in technology, and things like, you know, AI, blockchain, like complexity science, um, and other ways of thinking about the world, such that, you know, the time is ripe for really solutions of a different like magnitude or different paradigm to emerge. But it can't be done just on your own.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, like I'm even thinking about like, can you have a like an Avengers like squad of, you know, some like very brilliant, distinct people working together on teams to solve these kind of wicked challenges.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the Mythbusters, but like in a team of like 7 people.
Mm.
That'd be cool.
So are you gonna be Nick Fury? Are you gonna bring together that team? Is that the goal here?
You know, that'd be super cool.
Yeah, maybe
I'm
that's
sure.
something
Yeah,
you could. Hmm.
I'm sure there are projects like this happening in some way, but yeah. Well, what was your question?
No, I was just saying, like maybe that's something that you could really do well in. Like it's sort of leadership, but it's also like I don't know. It's more than leadership. It's being able to recognize talent, and it's being able to put together the right team, and it's also being able to set an example, right? So it's a lot of things, and maybe those are components of leadership. I'm not sure, but a part of it is you giving responsibility to other people and trusting that that everything will come together and produce a good product, right? Um, Something will come out of it, and yeah, I think that'd be super dope. I don't know, like it is 8 months or 10 months enough to come up with a strategy in that sense. Like you do have access to a lot of like talent already, right? Like your network is already pretty dispersed and ever growing, considering all the friends you've made in undergrad or even beyond that. Like there are people who are going to be in positions of serious power, for sure. And I don't know, would it be beneficial for you to leverage that sometime in the near future?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, who knows? And I don't know, maybe the first few or first 10 projects or initiatives, teams that I'm involved in, like might be complete failure.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause there's so many things that can go wrong. But 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 another part of me thinks that like the best teams of the future aren't just going to be from businesses. They're, you know, they have to form communities. You know, problems might be best solved through a cohesive community.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's an idea that is really being like kind of rediscovered in the workplace, especially in like tech.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, these tech companies with like billions of dollars are having this problem, like, okay, how can we get these people to work together? Oh, people work better when they're like more fulfilled with their like quality of life. Wow, let's give them like great perks and have like good food in the cafeteria. Oh, let's make our spaces open so it's more likely for people to interact with each other. Like, oh, let's do this, let's do that. Like you start to see a pattern. Like, oh, and you know they're building like campuses. Like, this is heading towards like what a village or a community would be like.
I
But
wish healthcare was like that.
yeah, and yeah, it should be, and it could be. But yeah, you see that pattern of these teams and businesses moving towards something approximating like community and village structures. And I think one of the other problems that we're running up into is that building a cohesive community, I mean, just because like everyone on the team is a human being doesn't mean that we can just instantly form like cohesive communities. Like the problem is far deeper, right? So with things like we've talked about like racial and cultural tensions, like, you know, if you think about it, like if humanity diverged from like a common tree of our ancestry, like, you know, starting from Africa and the Middle East, and then we kind of like split up left and right, we're like, yeah, just totally different people. You know, maybe up until like a few hundred years ago, we've lived apart with our own customs and values and belief systems for tens of thousands of years, and then the world kind of just like reconnected with our weird cousins.
Estranged cousins, yeah.
Estranged cousins, and like how much chaos and turmoil did that bring on the world? Like how much differences and misunderstanding and abuse of like power and authority was there? And you know, we might think that we're over that, but we're not, because we keep running into these fundamental problems. So what I'm trying to get at is, I think in order for a group of human beings to work cohesively as like a single unit, you need to form communities. And to form communities, you need like a commonality, a common goal, a common vision, a common heritage or story that binds people together. And that's not the easiest thing to do. Because each of us are disconnected from our own stories. So how would we know if our story aligns with someone else's? So I think in terms of bringing it back to actions, the best thing I can do now is to work on myself, to try to bring myself to some kind of balance, to get to know more about like my own story, where I'm from, where my people are from, what are our traditions, values, why did they arise, blah, blah, blah. Like that might take a whole lifetime to discover. And I think if each individual takes that time to discover that and enrich their identities and express it more in the world, then we might get something more like the kind of communities that we're envisioning. And the communities themselves will organically like collaborate and in order to sustain themselves and generate novel solutions that fit the context of their communities and the lives that they're living. So yeah, keep
I think
in on the self.
I do you remember when I told you about my dream?
Yeah.
Oh, you blanked out here. I don't know where you went. Oh, you know when I told you about my dream?
Yeah.
I said something like you are at the center of your community.
Yeah.
So that's something that came to me, and the idea behind it is that from your perspective, you are the integrator of all the people that you know and that are within your network, right?
Mhm.
And so in that sense, you're the one that decides the purpose of that community, because the way you interact with everyone sort of all points towards a goal that you personally have. And so I agree with you that one of the best ways to act on um, to to be proactive on creating big change is to start with yourself, because if you figure out what you think is right and what you think is important, then you're going to act then in that way within your own community and sort of integrate people and bring people together in that way. And I think that's really powerful. And perhaps the people who are able to do that the best are the ones that do end up creating more change, because people buy into that. People start to understand that and want to also pursue that same goal. And now it's not just you as the only center of your community. It's you're at the center, but these other people are also at the center as well. And it's like this network of nodes that keeps dispersing out into broader and broader communities, essentially. Um, so that's the hope.
Yeah.
And the example that I think of immediately, I've been watching Avatar: Last
Yes.
Adventure recently, and
Wow.
the Avatar is this. The very definition of that word is like a representative. Um, and so the Avatar is a master of all four elements, and the significance of that is that each sort of tribe or each different nation has their way of living, and has their own styles, and it's like different countries essentially. But the Avatar is able to take from each different nation, different community, let's call it, and play to their strengths, right? And people look to the Avatar because they see this potential of the communities coming together and being integrated and creating this extremely powerful whole. Um, and so I think Avatar is it's so entertaining, and it's such a cool thing to watch because it's very mythological too, and that really perks up my symbolistic cravings that I've been repressing over the last few years. But the point is, I think, yes, I think the point of our existence perhaps is to become that avatar and to recognize, the strengths of each of these different ways of thinking and ways of behaving, and trying to bring out the best in them. And hopefully people will see that and be inspired to do the same.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, I love that you started watching the Avatar. Um, yeah.
I've watched it before, but I'm like rediscovering it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I like a month ago, I finished my rediscovery process of the Avatar. I think it's one of the highest rated like IMDb TV shows or like animated series, and it's been like immensely popular. And the Avatar show itself is like this unique blend of this Western heroic myth journey combined with all these, Eastern thought, mysticism, and values. Like, I don't know, one episode is just about like yogic teachings and how to unlock your chakras by balancing your emotions, right? So it's interesting because the show itself is this kind of mythological integration that's starting to happen. And for me, like the message that I got out of it is, the avatar is, you know, the avatar hosts the spirit of, that spirit that's lived, I don't know, tens of thousands of lives and has saved the world time and time again. And it's powerful because it says to that like random little kid, like, hey, like you are the savior of the world, and there's a lot you need to learn, but you're gonna do it because there's actually no other options. You have to, you know. And as the savior of the world, the show portrays the kind of developmental path and challenges that the hero is going to face. And then, I think we conceptualize the hero as this mythological figure that is larger than life, that can't possibly exist. But the thing is that, the more I grow up, the more the line between myth and reality starts to just dissipate. And the more I realize that, like, the heroes and like the figures that are revered for like their actions, like whatever, they were people just like you and me, and through whatever they experienced and the lives that they led, they were able to be the savior of whatever world that they occupied. Some of them. You think of like figures like Gandhi, or you saw like Shawshank, no, not Shawshank, Hacksaw Ridge.
Oh yeah.
and
Shawshank Ridge.
Kind of, heroic, superhuman almost deeds that are capable by people just like you and me. And that should inspire an enormous amount of hope in people. So like I believe that's the developmental journey of each and every individual. If each and every individual could live as if like you are the avatar, you're the savior of the world, then the end result will be perfectly integrated and harmonious whole. Not just that one person, the avatar, no, but the all four nations will come together, and who knows what the end result of that is.
Mm-hmm. It's very interesting. And if you watch Avatar and then you watch Korra, I don't know if you watch Korra yet.
Kind of, yeah.
Kind of. Okay. Well, okay. Apparently, a lot of people didn't like Korra. I think they represent sort of two paths in which the Avatar can go, right? So, Aang, I might spoil a little bit. Let me know if you don't want to listen to this, but
I'm familiar with, yeah.
Okay, so Aang took a lot longer to master all four elements. Korra starts off knowing fire, water, and earth. Like the first scene, she shows off her mastery of those three elements, right? But Aang started off sort of knowing himself pretty well and being well integrated in terms of his emotions and his sort of like, I guess, self-identity.
Mm-hmm.
But Korra, the whole progression of Korra is the legend of Korra is that her identity is challenged throughout all 4 seasons. I think 4 seasons. Progressively, every season, she's reminded that the Avatar is not needed. That the Avatar is sort of like outdated. Like people can do without her, and some of the strongest characters sort of test her on that. And nearly every season, she gets defeated multiple times until the very end when she can conquer them. But Aang doesn't experience a similar attack on him. He does get like killed, but he comes back, and it doesn't like bother him as much, I think, as Korra. Like Korra is devastated by it, and so what I'm getting at is, as the Avatar, as we are the Avatar, we can come to this sort of crisis where we have all this potential, but we question ourselves. So that's, I guess, the Korra perspective. Or we have a lot to learn, and that journey itself is very difficult. And that's, I think, Aang's trajectory. So in both cases, like, there's some sort of growth and there's some sort of challenge to face. but they sort of come at it from different angles. Does that make sense? And so I think the idea may be that, everyone has it in themselves to be the avatar. Like, they don't have to be competent. They don't have to be competent initially. They can learn and they can grow and they can become the avatar. And conversely, people might already have the skills but have a lot of doubt in themselves. And I know, like, I think a lot of people in our circles have a lot of self-doubt and like a lot of imposter syndrome and a lot of self-criticism. And what they need is a reminder that, they're very capable and they know a lot and they can make something of it, but they just have to get through it and solidify their identity so they can bring out the best in themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's my analysis of the two series. They're sort of counterparts, Aang and Korra.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I'm not as knowledgeable about Korra as I am about Aang.
Right.
But yeah, I think all our mythologies kind of point in that direction. Kind of like, what is it pointing at? Is it pointing at, like, God in the sky, and and those have their own symbolic meanings too. But my religious fundamental orientation, my belief is that all that, like, is pointing at you,
Mm-hmm.
like thyself. And yeah, you have a responsibility to, I don't know, to carry out your life in the best way that you can.
And maybe that's a sort of missing message in this current society, this current state of affairs. Like, I think the closest thing that gets to that point is like the love yourself movement, or the be yourself, movement. But I don't find it very powerful. Like, it's not nested in this nice little myth, this nice little story, right? It's hard to exemplify how by being yourself and being the best version of yourself, you're going to bring out the greatest change in the world. There's nothing to showcase that. You sort of have to just go into it believing that that's the best thing for you and for the people around you.
Yeah, but right now, I think we're at a point where we can, like, through theory, like through fairly rigorous, like, scientific, like even mathematical means, like in complexity science, or or reinterpreting and analyzing the mythologies and belief systems that we've created so far, we can start to say with a fair bit of confidence that one of the central tenets of, I don't know, of those belief systems is that, the most important thing is the individual and how the individual conducts him or herself in relation to the world. So, yeah, I guess, well, love yourself.
Love yourself.
And love others, because they're also selves.
Yes.
And
they're also part of your self network, your self community.
Yeah. Maybe I'll leave you with like one last idea. So
sure.
It's like, how do two people become like one thing? How do two people like join in union? So I've been thinking about it in terms of like
wait.
atoms.
Oh,
so
atoms?
Yeah. So when like two hydrogen atoms, like they're just doing their own thing, and they have their own like periphery, like electrons that are kind of whizzing around. If these two want to make a bond, then they need to share the electrons. So there's this like constant exchange of their energy that kind of bonds them together, like as if there was like a literal stick that was joining them and those two were one thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's more, these two are like still have their own like core identities. They're sets of protons and neutrons. But it's the process of exchange and mutual sharing that provides the bond.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we need to rediscover like how to be our own distinct selves, but also to share and exchange not only goods and services, but ideas, emotions, like anything
Mm-hmm.
that can bind us. That's part of the reason why music and other forms of expression are so important. And yeah, so be better and become one with everyone around us.
Be one with everything. Isn't that Buddhist thought? I wonder.
Yeah, something like that.
All right. Well, thanks for that bit of optimism there, and that hope for the future, where we're becoming more of a unified community, unified peoples, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see if we can act it out in the world by
Right.
next week.
Next week.
By next week. All right. Cool. We'll end it off there. Thanks everyone for listening. Thank you, June. And we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye.